Hello there, welcome to Book Talk, and this is your host, Anthony Moirore. At Book Talk, we get to have an author come and tell us about his book or her book. And today, we have a great guest. And at this point, I want you to remind you to share this video or this audio with anyone who is out there that could benefit from the sharing of our books, the books that we get to share on this platform. And our podcast is available on all the major podcast platforms: Audible, Google Podcasts, iTunes, you name it. So remember to share it, and remember to listen to the past episodes and future episodes from those platforms. And without taking more time, I'm going to introduce our guest today, who is going to tell us about the book that is written. And we are going to have a great time. So welcome to the show, Bob DePasquale. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Anthony. Wow, is it good to be here on the show today. Thank you for having me.
It's wonderful. We are glad to have you on our show, and we are going to hear about your book, and I can already see it, Personal Finance by Bob DePasquale.
That's it.
Yes, but even before we go deep into the book, we'd like to know about yourself. Who is Bob?
Well, I am now an author, which was something that I didn't think that I would ever do when I was younger. I was born in New York in the United States, and I moved to Florida when I was just a young kid. My parents wanted to get away from the cold weather, and I spent much of my life growing up outside and playing sports, and I thought I was going to be either a professional athlete, a coach, or a communicator. And I actually studied broadcast journalism in grad school. So I have a master's degree in broadcast journalism. I worked in radio for a couple of years. And then I got recruited into the financial industry. And I had no expectation of going into that industry. And then before you know it, 12 years had gone by, and I had worked really, really hard. I don't know if you read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. He would be a great author to have on this show, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that you need 10,000 hours of work to be an expert or to be proficient at something.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing the math the other day, well, not the other day, about a year or two ago now. And someone had asked me, are you an expert in finance? And I hesitate to say that because money and economics, that's a very, very complicated system in the world that we live in. We're all interconnected. So I hesitate to say that I'm an expert.
Mm-hmm.
But by Malcolm Gladwell's definition, I am twice over an expert. I've spent more than 20,000 hours working with families and helping them navigate their financial lives. So that's a little bit about me and my background. And eventually it brought me to writing a book, and it's amazing. It's been a long journey, but it's been great.
And that's beautiful. I'm glad to hear that. And for those of you who may not have had a chance, because we've been with you before, but on your podcast. So you mentioned that you went into journalism at some point, and you are still using this. Can you tell us a bit about your podcast?
Yes, absolutely. I would love to. I love talking about our podcast and what we do. Our podcast is called Speaking of Impact.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I started our podcast is originally because I had been asking my former employer if I could start a podcast, and it was in the financial industry. And years of asking, I just wasn't allowed to for compliance and regulatory reasons. There's, you're very limited on what you can do, and trying to do things the right way in the financial industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then during the pandemic, when I had first started, I told them, I said, listen, I can't get out of the house. You're paying me to talk to people about their money. I need a way to communicate with people. You got to let me start this podcast now. And they actually did. They finally did. And my mom, who was working for me at the time, she heard me scream in my office, in the back of the office. And she came running into the room, and she's like, what happened? Is everything okay? And I told her, I said, yeah, they're going to let me start a podcast. I was so excited because I hadn't really flexed my broadcasting muscle in over a decade at that point. And then I got an email a couple of days later, and they said, well, so I hope your podcast preparations are going well, but just remember that you can't say anything about money.
Mm.
And I was like, what's the point of starting the podcast? That was the whole point, so I could talk about money with people. And
Yeah.
then, to be honest with you, Anthony, I realized that I didn't really want to do a podcast just about money. In fact, there's hundreds of podcasts about money, and I might get in trouble for saying this, but a lot of them are kind of boring, to be honest with you. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want to do that. I decided that I wanted to do a podcast about people doing what they love and making a positive impact in the world. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that's something that you're doing, and that's why I wanted to have you on our show. I see your book in the background, by the way, Be Good for Good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we love talking with positively minded, motivational people who are making the world a better place. So that's what we do. We're releasing episode number 87 tomorrow. I know we're recording this on a Wednesday, and we've been
Mm-hmm.
doing really good. It's been a great show.
And it's beautiful. And I've had some very great report from people who listen to that episode, and they really love your show, and they actually subscribe to it, so they will be listening to other
That's great.
podcasts that
That's
other
great.
episodes that you put on there. So it's wonderful. You're doing a good job. And there's one thing I like about what you've just shared, that even though we've been through some tough times in the last 2 years, there's some good stories out there. And I have my own. That's when I came out with a book. And now you have your own. This is when you came out with a podcast. So it's not all gloom during the pandemic. We can draw some positives out of some negative issues. Mm-hmm.
It has been a challenging couple of years. I know that a lot of people have lost their lives. A lot of people have lost loved ones. I know a lot of people who work in the medical field. I know a pharmacist really well. I know a multiple nurses, a couple doctors, and it's been stressful. It's been really stressful. And so for me, I like to count my blessings on a daily basis, Anthony. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that I think is very important in our lives, that we have gratitude for what it is that we do have. And thankfully, I've been very healthy. I have a pretty interesting story about actually being in China
Mm-hmm.
shortly before the pandemic was officially announced. And when we had gotten home, we felt pretty sick. So I'm pretty sure I was one of the first people to actually have the virus in the Western world. And thankfully, it didn't kill us. We felt pretty lousy for a period of time, but it's been great. I've been very healthy since then, and I got an opportunity to start this podcast. I got an opportunity to start a new business, and it is really, it's really forced me to be more advanced in my use of technology. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't do meetings like this one. I didn't do podcasting like this. I didn't communicate with people from all over the world. I had
Mm-hmm.
never done that. And I've learned so much in the past couple of years speaking with some of the most fascinating people. So the pandemic has really been an impetus for me and the team of people that I work with to be a little bit more technologically advanced. It's been really, really good from that perspective. So as much as I haven't appreciated the illness and the pandemic and how it's affected a lot of people's lives, but from a business and technology perspective, it's really been great for me.
Oh, yeah, sure. And we should always remember, as you say, to count our blessings, because we have many. And yeah, we are thankful that we have this great day. This is a great day. Every day is a great day. And we have opportunity to share ideas and thoughts, and also the books that we've written. So today, focusing on personal finance, which we are also grateful about. Your book talks about how technology, social media, and ads affect your money decisions. And yes, we have finance, but the decisions we make sometimes are devastating. I mean, it's challenging to be affected by all that is going on, and
Mhm.
sometimes we may lose track. But we are glad that you're here with us with personal finance in a public world. Can you please take us through the book, please?
Sure. The subtitle there, in a public world, is important because the idea that personal finance is no longer something that's just personal.
Mm-hmm,
It has become something in this world where it's easy to share information. We have to be careful with it. We have to be very, very careful with cybersecurity and those type of perspectives. In fact, we had a gentleman by the name of Michael Nutritelli on our podcast talk about cybersecurity. So I want to be clear. The message of the book is to use technology well and use it a lot for your
mm-hmm,
personal finances, but you need to definitely be secure with it. But
Mm-hmm.
the main premise of the book is that we should have a healthy relationship with money and also with technology. And those
Mm-hmm.
two can go hand in hand. Technology has gotten a bit of a bad rap recently. If you're on social media and you look at the internet, there's a lot of books written about how it's taken over our lives, and it's really affected how we think in many aspects, not just the financial world, but the way that the applications and the programmers behind these programs simulate and use the algorithm to really feed you what you want to see and what you want to hear and what you want to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
They're very, very powerful. And so there's a lot of text out there that says that the internet is really bad for us. We need to go back and what was the life like before we had a computer and a phone and a smartphone and all those devices that we have. And to some degree, I understand that. I couldn't imagine what it would have been like to grow up without technology, but
Yeah.
life probably would have been simpler. And
Mm-hmm.
so now, though, we are in a completely different world. One of the books that I read in my research is called Alone Together by an author by the name of Shelley Turkle. And
Okay.
she's got other books, but this is one of her first books. I think it was written about a decade ago. But even then, even about a decade ago, she was already making predictions about how robotics and technology are a part of life. And we're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be able to eliminate them. Even if
Mm-hmm.
I believed or anyone else in the world believes that life would be better without technology, it's already here. We can't
Yeah.
shield our children from technology. Yeah, we can limit screen time, and I recommend that for parents to limit how much time their kids actually spend on the
Mm-hmm.
screens, but they shouldn't vilify the screens. In
Okay.
fact, that time that your child is using a screen is good. It should be good time. It should not be looked at, oh, mommy or daddy's going to let me do this bad thing for an hour because I behaved well. That's not a good relationship with technology. So
Okay.
we need to have a positive relationship with technology. We need to use it for good. And the
Mm-hmm.
message of the book really seeks to share that. And because I have a background in financial planning and I know a lot of the ins and outs about that industry, I wanted to write a book to help people use technology positively in their financial lives.
That's beautiful. And talking of personal finance, which we are talking now, and this includes families and individuals who don't have families.
Mhm.
Uh, what steps, I mean, now that we have the technology in affecting the decisions that we make, what exactly would you advise someone in implementing the technology that we have to take care of our personal finance?
Sure. So the first thing I suggest is that you figure out how to use the applications and things that you already use.
Mm-hmm.
Not don't add anything. Don't add more complexity to your financial and your technological or digital life, right?
Okay.
First figure out how to have a healthy relationship with the technology with what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
So most people are using a computer and a smartphone. They have applications like Twitter and social media, Facebook, Instagram, all those platforms. And those platforms, I tell a story in the book about how my friend moved from New Jersey, which is about a 3-hour flight away from Fort Lauderdale, where I live. He
Mm-hmm.
actually moved. I haven't seen him in years. He moved to Fort Lauderdale, and we were on the phone, and he was explaining to me a little bit about why he moved, and we were just catching up. And I said, "Well, it's getting kind of late, man. I'm actually going to bed. You probably need to eat something if you just showed up." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm making dinner right now. I'm cooking it." And I said to him, "Joe, how are you cooking dinner? You just moved. You got boxes everywhere. You just flew into town. Shouldn't you be Uber Eats or calling out, ordering takeout or going out to grab something to eat?" He said,
Mm-hmm.
"No, I have this oven that it's a quick fix oven. It's very easy to use. You plug it in, you put something in there, and it cooks in 20 minutes or whatever it is. You put a full meal in there." And I
Okay.
said, "Oh, that's pretty cool." He sent me a link, and this is a really long-winded answer to what your question was. But the point
Yeah.
is, he sent me this link. I looked at it for maybe 10 seconds. I fell asleep. I went to bed. And I said, I hope you have a nice dinner. Congratulations on your new apartment. I woke up the next morning and that oven followed me around the internet wherever I
Mm-hmm.
went. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it knew that I looked at it. It knew I was interested in the oven. I thought it was cool. So I bring this up because that right there is a proof that these applications know what we want to see. So my
Mm-hmm.
first recommendation is to put some parameters or some limits or control or understand what these applications are trying to do. You got to
Mm-hmm.
know that the ads that you see these days are the ones that they want you to see and the ones that you've determined that you want to see based on your browser history. So there's a
Mm,
couple of things that you can do. You can limit your own screen time. But like
okay.
I said, that's kind of hard to do, especially if you use your phone or stuff for work. So what you can do is you can adjust the cookie settings on your browser so it doesn't save as much as the information of your browsing. There's also
Mm,
different applications you can use to limit the amount of ads you see. There's just a lot of ways that you can be mindful of what the system is trying to feed you. And the reason
mhm.
why you want to do that is because you don't want to be tempted to buy stuff 100 times a day. If you look
Okay.
on the back of my book, there's a statistic about over 1,200 times a day we interact with our phones. And a
Mm,
lot of those are ads, whether we're swiping to get rid of it or clicking an X or something, but we have a lot of interaction. So that my first suggestion is to understand that and then figure out how to not be tempted by those things. So it's
mm,
really first thing is more of a subtraction. Believe and understand what the system is designed to do. And then once you've got a good idea on that, then you can start putting together the technological applications and systems in your life that you want to use to help you to do that. And the
mm,
first thing that we always talk about in financial planning is debt management and budgeting. We want
mhm.
to make sure, that we're spending less than we earn.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that you're earning enough money to pay your bills and always leave some leeway and put some of that money away to save. And I always recommend that people have at least 3 months, preferably 6 months or more, depending on what your income is like. But you want to
Okay.
have that amount of income saved so that, God forbid, something happens, something breaks down, you lose your job, you get sick, you get hurt, you can't work, whatever it is, that you have money in there to pay those non-discretionary expenses, the things that you know that you have to pay every month. You got to buy food, you might need gas to travel, you got to pay your rent or your mortgage bill. So you want to have your budget in order that way. And then if you have debt, I'm not a huge fan of debt. I think debt is something, mortgages, and there's different way to use debt for positive in our
Mhm.
in most people's situation. But in a lot of them, a lot of the consumer and the credit card debt and those high interest payments that we want to pay that off. So I have a system. It's not my proprietary system, but there's a couple different systems that I outline in the book that you can help you do that. So the
Okay.
first thing is understand the system we're in, put the parameters on your own technology experience and
Mm,
understand how the system works. Number two is make sure you have your budget in order. You have that emergency fund of 3 to 6 months expenses I talked about,
mhm.
spending less than you earn, and then working on your debt, making sure that you're paying more than just the minimum payments on the debt that you have. So those
Mm,
are three really quick things that most people can do in a relatively short amount of time just to get themselves going the right direction. The book dives way deeper on all kinds of different financial topics, whether it's investing, insurance, which is a huge part of our lives. It talks about cryptocurrency. If you're into that, there's a whole chapter on that, how that works. There's a
mhm.
chapter on taxes, estate planning, and legal documents. And then there's a chapter on generosity as well. If you're a generous person, like I try to be in my life, I think
Mm,
that's a really big portion of having a healthy relationship with your money is being generous.
mm. I like it when you mention before about the ads. Every page that you open, every application that you are into, there are going to be ads about this thing, about the other thing.
Yes.
And if you're not careful enough, you may end up uh, poor
No.
from the spending that is presented before you.
Yeah, and a
Mhm,
lot of times it's not a big purchase. I mean, most people can understand I shouldn't go to the store and buy and spend thousands of dollars on something that I don't have. But a
mhm,
lot of times what happens, especially with subscription services and nickel and diming yourself into debt is tough. And a lot of times it's little things. You go to the store, you're like, oh, $5 here, $10 here. I go to Starbucks every day. Well, if you go to Starbucks and spend $5 every day, that's
mhm.
$100 a month. That's $1,200 a year,
Yeah.
if not more, right? If you go on the weekends. So the thought is, it's probably the smaller things that are actually getting you, which you don't even realize. And
Mhm,
it can be so easy. I was talking with a friend the other day about that one click buy on Amazon
mhm,
is killer. All you got to do is hit one button and you've bought it. You spent money, your credit card or whatever you use to pay. That can be really hard for some people. So you want to keep those things under control. You talked about the ads, and I feel so strongly about that because there's
mhm,
the algorithms are so powerful. They really are. It used to be that the ads I used to see on TV when I was growing up were from the companies that had the most money to sell. And I always use the Super Bowl
Yeah.
as the best example. It costs more than $1
Mm-hmm.
million for a 60-second spot during the Super Bowl. And you
Mm-hmm.
got 100 million people watching this thing throughout,
Mm-hmm.
if not more. And it costs $1 million for a spot. Well, there may not be any products. Like I may not be looking for a brand new car, or
Mm-hmm.
I may not be into Budweiser. I know Budweiser has been a huge advertiser, the beer company in the Super
Okay.
Bowl, right? I may not
Mm-hmm.
even drink beer, but they're showing this ad because they have the most money. It doesn't really do that anymore. And we still have
Mm-hmm.
television, but most of the ads that we see, what decides what we're going to see is actually us. And that's what makes
Mm-hmm.
it so hard and so tempting. Now, you could argue, and a lot of these platforms will say, Anthony, they'll say, well, this is a great, it really improves the user experience because when you're scrolling through Facebook, Facebook's only going to show you the ads that you want to see. So you could
Mm-hmm.
argue that it makes the experience with the application better. And in some cases, that might be the case. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
I actually believe differently. And if you look at the psychological research, a lot of the stuff that I did for the book, because I don't have although I have a minor in psychology, I don't consider myself a psychological scholar whatsoever. And so I
Okay.
really had to spend a lot of time researching psychology for the book. And if you look at the research, it will tell you how dopamine is used and how the different strategies that these platforms use to keep you on it. And one
Okay.
of them is specifically, even the ads are something that a lot of people want to see. I used to, and I still to this day, if I can record, I skip over commercials. Or if it's a live TV, I leave the room for a couple of minutes because I could care less about the commercials. But
Yeah.
then you're on one of these platforms, the ads or commercials, a lot of people, you actually want to see them. You actually want to watch the ads. And so
Mm-hmm.
it can be very, very, very tempting. So I'm very, very strong on understanding what it is that you're feeding yourself. You really got to curate your social media feeds so that A, you're not tempted, but B, that it's also stuff that maybe you do want to see. But you
Mm-hmm.
got to be really, really careful. And I have, if you don't mind, I have one suggestion that seems to be a little bit unpopular with a lot of the people that I've talked to recently. But can I share with you an idea?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So one of the ways to combat this, because people ask me, well, Bob, so what do I do? I'm not going to, like you said earlier, I'm not going to just stop using my phone or stop using Instagram. That's how I keep in
Mm-hmm.
touch with my family and I send pictures of my kids out or whatever it is. I say, no, don't stop using the platform. What you should actually do is, and here I am, a financial person, and I'm going to tell you, spend your money. Don't spend it, but you got to spend it on the right things. So a lot of people will tell you, I just told you, save it, spend less than you earn, budget your money well, have an emergency fund. Absolutely, all true. But you got to find the couple, one, two, maybe three things in your life that actually bring you joy,
Mm-hmm.
that make you feel better and
Mm-hmm.
make your life better, make you healthier mentally. They could actually be good for you, right? So it could be your Starbucks every day. It
Yeah.
could be your gym membership. It could be the type of food you buy. It could be going to the movies once a week with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, find those things. Now it's got to fit in your budget. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to, if the thing that brings you joy is a Lamborghini, don't buy one of those every week, right?
Okay.
Don't go on a world vacation once a month.
Yeah.
But find the simpler things in life that actually do bring you joy, and and yes, absolutely spend your money on that and put it in your budget that you're going to spend your $50 this month on taking your kid to Chuck E. Cheese or going to the water park with your family or movie, gym membership, whatever it is. Spend the money on that. And here's
Mm-hmm.
why. The psychology says a satisfied mind is less likely to spend money on things that the world tells it are important. So
Oh.
all of those messages and ads that we see out there, yeah, it might
Mm-hmm.
be interesting. I might
Mm-hmm.
see something fun, but that doesn't mean it actually brings me joy. It just might be an interesting ad. And so
Oh.
I'll be seeing that over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
If I have joy in my life, I'm happy that I'm satisfied, whatever that thing, one or two things that I spend money on are making
Mm-hmm.
me comfortable and have a healthy life and from an emotional perspective, I'm
Mm-hmm.
much less likely to spend money on stuff that doesn't actually mean something. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I suggest that people actually do find a couple things that are important to them, that bring them joy, and spend the money on those that will prevent you from spending money on things that aren't actually that important, but the world tells us, or the social media platform, or our neighbor tells us are important.
Mm. And I like the fact that you tell us to spend, but be careful how we spend. And that is what your
Mhm.
book tells us. At this point, I would like us, maybe because you've told us of how to take care of the outlet of our finance, I would
Mhm.
like us to maybe have a look at some of the income generating activities. I mean, some of the ideas that you have in the book that you suggest. Look, you mentioned them before about stocks and
Mhm.
crypto, others. Maybe one or
Yep.
two or three. Let's look a bit deeper into some of them, your favorites, and let's see how we can increase our finance, our income.
Yeah, so now you're speaking my language, Anthony. I spent most of my career trying to help people save and accumulate wealth and accumulate
Hmm.
money. And here I am for the past 10 minutes telling people to spend it.
Yeah,
And I previously I talked about generosity. And so yes, I think we have be very wise on how we send our money out,
yeah.
but we got to figure out a way to bring it in too. And so
Mm-hmm.
the number one way that people can build wealth, it's not the sexiest answer or idea, is just to continue to go to work, to work and earn your money. Right?
Yeah.
People talk about, I'm going to earn a bunch of money in the stock market, or I'm going to save money on my taxes, or I'm going to create passive income, and all these different hacks and ideas on how to get rich quick.
Mm,
The vast majority of people in the world, and then I know some people don't have this availability,
mm,
but for most people in the world, the best way to earn money is just to go to work, to get a
mhm,
job and to work. Now, on a as an aside, I think you have to find something that's fulfilling if you really want to get the most out of life. If
mm,
you're going to work and you hate going to work every day, I would argue that it's more important that you're healthy mentally than have more money. But that's a whole other discussion. So the number one way is just to go to work. But
mm,
when you have extra money, you're spending less than you earn. You're saving money. You're maybe you have money in a retirement account, depending on what country you live in and how the system works. You can
yeah.
put money away. You can invest in things. And so there's lots of different types of investments out there. I'm familiar with the system because I've worked in it for many years. But I think most people understand or have heard of the stock market. So one way that you can invest your money is the stock market. Now, here's the problem with the stock market.
Mhm,
Information is extremely abundant these days, but there's millions of companies out there. So how do you actually make the decision on what to invest in? And
mm,
for the vast majority of people, the best route to go is to take a more general approach. So rather than try to put all of your investments, all of your net worth in or your liquid or cash available to invest in one or two or three or even 10 companies,
mhm,
right? The best thing would be to do is they have what are called uh, index funds, or they have what are called ETFs these days, and they have all different kinds of breakdowns. But an
okay.
ETF stands for exchange traded fund. It trades just like a stock during trading hours. You can purchase it and you
Mhm,
can buy a whole segment of the market, and it could be thousands of companies, and that gives you this diversification. So Anthony, if you're investing in 1,000 companies and one of them goes under, you're not going to be too worried. But if
yeah,
you're invested in two companies equally and one of them goes under, then you just lost half your money. So the
that's
reason why you use, and then you may have heard of mutual funds out there. Those are an option too. They usually have a little bit higher of an expense.
mhm,
But any type of fund that has hundreds to thousands of companies in it is usually a good way for people to get started because they don't have to do stock picking. It's
mm,
much less time consuming than doing research on your stocks. You can say, I would like to buy the S&P 500 index, meaning
okay.
500 of the largest companies. Super easy. You get an account. You can go through an investment advisor, registered investment advisor. You can go through a financial advisor, a money manager like myself or someone else, or you
Mhm,
can just go to an application. You may have heard of E-Trade. Robinhood is very popular. There's a whole story about Robinhood in the book, actually, when
yeah,
we talk about the stock market. And so that's one way that people can get started. They can invest in stocks. There's
okay.
the bond market as well. The bond market is also very complicated, so you want to be careful there. They
Mhm,
work differently. They work much, much differently than stocks. We probably don't have time to go into how a bond exactly how it works, but essentially you're lending money to a municipality or a company in
okay.
exchange for income. So that's a way to generate income. You can also, we talked about cryptocurrency. I get
Yeah,
this question a lot all the time now. And so
yeah.
here's my thought. Here's my thought on cryptocurrency.
Yes, there's
It's
been a lot of
fascinating.
noise on cryptocurrency in the recent years, and talking about Bitcoin. Have you bought
Uh-huh.
Bitcoin?
It's fascinating. It's a
Yeah.
fascinating thing, and I would
Mm-hmm.
encourage anyone. You may not be that interested in it from a entertainment perspective, and I'm
Yeah.
a little bit of a nerd, a money nerd, so that I can just learn about it just fun, regardless of how much money we're making doing it. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, there's the thing that you have to understand is that digital currency and the blockchain are different than how our money system works today in the world. And this is borderline an economics lesson,
Mm-hmm.
but there are some people out there who are investing. I mean, there's been hundreds of cryptocurrencies that have failed. There's plenty that are still alive. Bitcoin is the most popular one that you've heard of. You also may have heard of um, Dogecoin, which
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a joke. Ethereum and Solana are kind of the next in line, the most popular, biggest market capitalization. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, what a blockchain chain is, it's a digital ledger. So my
Mm-hmm.
mom used to work in a bank when she grew up, and I remember her balancing her checkbook and keeping track of the money going in and going out of her account.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way I visualize it. Now it's a little bit more complicated than that, and there's a way that uh, the transactions have to be proven correct, and that's through that's Bitcoin mining. You may have heard of that.
Yeah.
And then we can go down a whole rabbit hole on Bitcoin mining, but essentially a blockchain is a ledger, a public ledger that keeps track of all the transactions. So
Okay.
theoretically, anyone can go back and look at all of the transactions that have ever happened on Bitcoin since Satoshi Nakamoto, who's either one person or many, started a white paper that actually started that where Bitcoin came from over a decade ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, you can technically go back and look. And so they call this decentralized finance. That's another big hot topic or hot word in the world. And what decentralized means is there's no one authority that keeps control of the whole system. It's
Okay.
decentralized because everyone keeps control of it. Everyone can go back and look and see the transactions that were made.
Mm.
And in our current system now, where the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency, the central bank, you may have heard of it, it's called the Federal Reserve. And
Yeah.
there's been big news in the industry right now, not even in the industry, just for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
where they plan on raising interest rates. So there's a couple, and the book talks about this too. There's a few different ways that the Federal Reserve can make adjustments to the system that they're allowed to do. They have a dual mandate from the Congress in the U.S.
Okay.
Keep prices stable and to make sure that inflation doesn't get out of hand. And
Mm-hmm.
so what they want to do is they want to pull these different levers, and one of them is adjusting interest rates. And
Okay.
so they're talking about raising interest. So the reason why I bring this up though is that central bank, I mean, they're in charge. Yes, I mean, there's regulation that comes from that, but ultimately the central bank is in charge, and most countries have their own central bank. And
Mm.
so that is what's called a fiat system. So if you hear the word fiat, it's not just a car, it's actually
Okay.
the name of the monetary system that we live in. And
Mm-hmm.
so crypto is fascinating because it's a very, very progressive, not only this in a political sense, but there's a very, very progressive form of money that's designed to take control away from a central authority and give
Okay.
it to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And also, one of the big selling points you may hear about, and I get questions about this all the time as well. One of the big selling points of Bitcoin is it's not an inflation set because there will only be 21 million of them ever minted. And so there's a
Okay.
few more as the miners verify these transactions, they are gifted essentially one part of the part of the way they get paid is they're given Bitcoin. So ultimately, when it's all said and done, there will only be 21 million released. So
Mm.
that means there's no central bank that can just print money. One of the
Mm.
other things that the Federal Reserve can do is that they can essentially make money. And they do this by offering loans and lending money out themselves. There's a way that they add to more dollars to the system. And that's part of the reason why we have inflation. And there's a
Mm.
lot of people predicting that inflation is going to be really bad here because essentially the Federal Reserve has been printing money for quite a while now. And
Mm.
so if I have $10 and it buys me a book, let's say I want to buy Bob's book for $10 right now. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. Everyone kind of can understand that. I give you $10 and you give me the book.
Yeah.
But what happens if the Federal Reserve prints all this extra money? Now my dollar is technically not worth as much as it used to be. So
Mm.
what happens is it forces the price of goods to go up because there's more money in the system. More
Mm-hmm.
money, more people have the availability to buy. So my $10, once they print more money, is technically not worth that $10 that it used to be worth. They're not
Mm,
worth as much. So
mm,
then retailers can say, all right, I'm going to start jacking the prices up. And so that's what happens. Essentially, the
okay.
more of something there is, the less scarce it is. With Bitcoin, that's not going to happen. There's no there's no way that they can just make more Bitcoin. It will only ever be 21 million. So there will not be an inflation uh, result of Bitcoin because there's no central authority that can just print more of them. So
But but we
that's
also
a
but we also have some crypto that don't have a cap. I mean, there's
correct.
no, yes. So how about those? How does that?
Correct. So Bitcoin does have a cap, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why in my experience, this is anecdotal evidence. I don't have actual data on it, but just about every crypto expert or someone who's interested in that field has told me um, Bitcoin is it will be and will always be the standard for crypto because of that fact.
Okay.
That's most likely to be the one that we would transition to if the US dollar and the fiat system were to go away and somehow the world decided that crypto would be the answer. There
Mm,
are others that there is no cap, and
mm-hmm.
those are different. They serve different purposes. I know Ethereum is not so much used for an inflation hedge like Bitcoin might be, or a store of value for a long period of time. And
Okay.
a lot of the Ethereum technology is designed around more for transactions, and it's easier to use for different for lending and those sort of things. So
Mm,
we're in a very, very early stages of blockchain and cryptocurrency. Well, blockchain's been around longer, but cryptocurrency itself, we're in the very, very early, we're infantile stages. I mean, it was just born. And so they're
mm,
using this technology for a lot of things. You may have also heard of NFTs, non-fungible tokens,
okay.
DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. Those
Mm-hmm.
are all other offshoots of blockchain and these systems. So, yes, there
But
are other
mm,
cryptocurrencies
mm,
that aren't an inflationary hedge because ultimately they can print more of them.
but I have a question here, and someone out there could also be having the same question that I have. You talk of decentralizing this. I mean, if the fiat is regulated and the crypto is not
Mhm.
regulated, then how come you tell us that the fiat is insecure, or rather crypto is more advised to invest in? I mean, we don't understand. The regulated could be the more secure thing than the unregulated portion of the market. I Please make us understand that.
so the theory, and listen, I mean, anything could change. I'm sure there are going to be hackers and people that are going to do their best to get into a system. But
Okay.
ultimately, if it's completely public, and I know the most about Bitcoin,
Mm,
if it's completely public and every transaction is essentially visible,
okay.
it would be so incredibly impossible to guess the actual programming and the number that you would need to verify to cheat a transaction,
Mm,
that it would be virtually impossible.
uh,
And when basically miners are in a race to verify transactions so that they can get paid with Bitcoin.
okay.
And so if you look, there's a couple of videos out there. You can go to YouTube, and I feel like visuals will really, really help people. But they do a good job. If you look at Bitcoin mining transactions, if you search for that, you can learn how you can see basically how impossible it would be to fake a bit. Technically, yes, but the computing power just to complete a transaction or to verify one is
Mm,
immense. And
okay.
so in order to fake one, you would have to spend just as much power, and and it would have to get by everyone who has access to the blockchain, which is everyone.
Mm,
So for you to guess the number correctly and then swindle or fake out millions of people, it's virtually impossible. There's no way to
mm,
break that code. And
mm-hmm,
so it's much, much easier to commit fraud, even though it's not easy. It would be much easier to commit fraud inside our current fiat system because it's decentralized. It's
it's
centralized,
centralized, yeah.
and the technology allows it's much easier for someone to break into technology. You can also, I venture a guess. I would say the biggest chance for fraud in the Bitcoin space, at least right now, is if you somehow gave up your codes, your passwords, and someone
Yeah.
was to break into your system. Now we can get into a whole nother discussion about cold storage and warm storage and how you can hold your Bitcoin. Because remember, it's digital. It's not like you're holding one. And
Yeah.
so if your Bitcoin is not not directly available through the internet, that would be a form of cold storage. There's no one anyone can break into that. If it's in a hot wallet, if you will, then in theory, someone could break into your wallet if they had your information.
I think we need so many other episodes to just understand this
Oh
crypto
yeah,
world.
we could go for
We can't
hours, my
exhaust it
friend.
here. Yeah.
So
So give us one more source or one more uh, income generating activity or
sure.
engagement that you
So
would advise
we
us.
talked about just going to work. We talked about investing. We talked in stocks and bonds.
Mm,
We talked about cryptocurrency.
mm-hmm.
I think the other big thing out there that people, it's another form of investment is real estate.
Okay.
There's real estate a lot, especially in the United States. I'm not as
Mm,
privy in some of the other countries, but especially in the United States, the rules and regulations around real estate are very, very favorable if
yeah.
you can get involved in that market. And so it's not something that you want to just dive into without doing your research. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple of different ways that you can earn income from real estate. You can have an additional home that you rent out, for example,
Okay.
or you could have an office building, or you can uh, buy homes that need repair, fixer uppers. If you've heard
Mm-hmm.
that term before, and you can fix them up, and you can flip homes, and you can fix them and sell them. These are pretty advanced techniques. None of this show, by the way, should be misconstrued as investment advice. These are just ideas and things that you can look into, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm encouraging people to learn about them. But definitely for real estate, there's a couple of different ways you can do that, because real estate, there's no guarantee, but it tends to go up in value over time. So you're getting a principal increase in value that you can eventually sell later, but you're also can provide yourself income, which is what you're focusing on here. So you can do that as well. There's a way to generate income from your real estate. There's also some people out there who rent out homes, rooms in the home that they live in. Now, I don't know if I would be comfortable doing that to a stranger, but some people can do that too. So real estate is an opportunity, definitely, for income and for long-term appreciation.
Oh yeah, and as we've heard about real estate, I mean, for many people who have become millionaires and billionaires have gone in that direction. So even someone starting could just think about something small to start with, I guess, and go into real
Yes.
estate, just like one
And
extra home to rent
yep,
out.
there's tax benefits. There's also estate planning benefits to owning real estate. There's just a lot of reasons why real estate is attractive.
Mm,
But you also got to know that, I mean, look what happened in 2008, 2009 with the Great Recession, when there was a bubble in the mortgage in the
mm,
lending system, and
mm,
real estate tanked. Now, if you were just living in your home because you were just living in your home, you had no reason to go anywhere, and could afford your payments, it really
mm,
didn't affect you that much because you were just living in your home. Now things have turned around.
mm,
But if at that time you were getting ready to retire and sell your home so you could move and, whatever, go to your little island or something, and you were expecting
mm.
to get your home value might have been chopped in half or less, and you could have been in a really tough spot. So nothing is completely safe.
Yeah.
I mean, even your bank account technically is not insured, each different type beyond FDIC insurance at 250,000. But you really got to consider what you have. And to circle back briefly to the concept of diversification, when we talked about it, the first thing I brought up related to investing, diversifying amongst different types of asset classes too is usually a really, really good idea. I would do my best not to pile all of my resources in one version, right?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's
That's
easy
good.
to understand that with cryptocurrency. Most people would tell you not to put all your money in crypto right now, but
Mhm.
that goes for really anything. Um,
Anything.
you don't want to have all your money in one company. You know what I see? I see a lot of people that work for one company and got employee stock options, or have been
Mm-hmm.
either directly gifted stock or gifted options,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a lot of their net worth tied up in one organization, and they believe in that organization. They worked for them for many years, so I get it. But especially once you get to those closer to retirement age, You're taking a lot of risk by being all in one company. So some people don't even realize it. They're not intentionally
Mm.
being, under diversified or over allocated to one organization. They may not even realize it. So you just got to be careful. You want to consider all those things.
Oh, yeah, sure. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And it's good
No.
advice we get from you, Bob. And we
Yeah.
really appreciate you very, very, very much for being on our episode today. For those of you who may have joined us in the middle, we are talking with Bob DePasquale, or the book he's written, Personal Finance, with a subtitle In a Public World. And we've really had some wonderful insights from Bob. And we haven't got it all. Go get the book and read the rest of it from there. So,
Absolutely.
yes, we really thank you, Bob. But before we go, we'd like to hear just a few words that you'd like us to remember you with or remember the book with. Then we are going to end the show. So the show is yours.
Oh, thanks, Anthony. I've been talking a lot here, so I appreciate you giving me even a couple more moments here to speak. But I
Mhm.
would say this: I think everyone in the world can have a positive relationship with technology and money.
Mm,
And studies show, and I think you'd be surprised if you do end up picking up the book and reading it. I'd love to hear your feedback. If anyone wants to send me a message on Instagram or Twitter at BDPA, BDEPA, I'm always looking for feedback and trying to help people make wise decisions. I'd be curious to know what people think. But the main, believe it or not, message of the book is not ultimately how much money you should save or how you should not use technology. It's actually about how to foster positive relationships with those things in your life. And ultimately, there was a study that was done, and it's actually still active, been going on for like 100 years,
mm,
about how people's happiness has to do directly with relationships. And the people around you, healthy relationships with the people around you. For example, if you're married, I know some of the healthiest marriages have great understanding around money and
mm,
technology. And
mhm,
one of the biggest sources of divorce in our world is money. So the healthy relationships with loved ones, money and technology, believe it or not, they all are related. They truly, truly are. So if you can have conversations with your loved ones about these topics, don't let them be, don't, some families, it's not cool to talk about money. I think that's crazy. I think money should be talked about all the time,
mm,
from when people are young. My wife's a kindergarten teacher. I've tried to convince her, and she believes me.
mhm.
So I'm not really convincing her. I don't need kids to learn what cryptocurrency is and how to invest in the stock market, but they should be talking about money. So my final words: have conversations about money and technology with your loved ones, and you'll have a much better relationship with them in your life.
Whoa, beautiful. Thank you very much, Bob. We really appreciate all those insights. And now, how can people connect with you from here? And,
Yes, I
and
mentioned a moment
how
ago.
can they also get the book?
Yeah, you can go to bobdepasquale.com and you can get all the information about the podcast, the book. There's links to everything there. It's on Amazon. It's on Ingram, Spark, and Kobo. You can just about anywhere, Barnes and Noble, you can pick up the book, Personal Finance in a Public World. I appreciate your support. But if you want to talk with me directly, like I said, hit me up, slide into the DMs on Twitter or Instagram at BDPA. I'm on LinkedIn too, but I'll always do my best to answer. And if you have questions about the subject, would love to answer them. As you can tell, I love these conversations. So just want to spread a positive message about those things. So check me out.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Bob. And thank you very much, all the viewers and those who get to listen on the podcast platforms later. We really thank you for being with us. Thank you very much. We appreciate.
Yes, Anthony, man. Thanks. God bless, my friend. Thank you.
God bless you.